Hello, everyone, and welcome to iCritic Live. This is the podcast where we talk about entertainment, pop culture, and life in between. I'm your host, Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes of your time here with me today. And today we are going to talk about a topic that has kind of it comes up like once a year, usually around the time of the Oscars, as you can probably tell by the title of this episode. And the topic is, should people who not watch all of the nominated movies for the Oscars be allowed to be Academy Award voters? And, maybe it's just because I just noticed X getting a little bit more crazy since Elon bought it, but it seems to be like a bigger push this year because every year Variety writes an anonymous Oscar ballots article where they talk to anonymous Oscar voters and ask them questions about what they voted for and why. Now, there's usually some disturbing trends that show up every year, particularly if you're an animation fan. A lot of the voters admit that they don't watch the animated films, for example, and they let their kids pick what the winner is going to be, which is probably one of the reasons why The Wild Robot might win, but I'm still predicting Flow. But then this year you had other people basically saying like, well, look, I didn't like Dune Part 1. There was no way I was going to sit through another 3-hour slog again. And I actually saw people claiming things like, you have one job to do. One job. And if you're not going to do it, you should step aside and let someone else take it over. Now, I can kind of understand the frustration because I think all of us would secretly like to be Oscar voters. Like, some of us get really into the Oscar season. We make it a point to try and see every nominated movie before the show airs. I typically write a book about each Oscar year, which one is currently available for pre-order on Kickstarter. Check out the link below if you can. But we as movie fans really take a lot of stock and investment in the Oscars, even though they're usually wrong, ironically enough. But when we hear that there are voters who are in the position we would like to be in, and that sometimes they can't even bother to watch the nominated movies, it creates a reaction in us. Like, well, look, that's your job to watch the movies and vote. Why do you have that job? And I think we need to kind of explain what the Academy Awards is and what it isn't. First of all, being a voting member of the Academy is not a job. You don't get paid for doing this. Now, that may or may not make a difference to you. It probably should. But to become a member of the Academy, you usually have to have been nominated or won an Oscar yourself, or you had to have been sponsored by someone. And then if you accept the invitation, then you have to pay your dues. I don't know if that's a yearly thing or a one-time thing. But yeah, if you're an Oscar voter, you're essentially paying to be an Oscar voter. Like, it's not something that you receive money from. Now, you do get wined and dined, you do get screeners, you sometimes get nice little gifts. I'm not saying there's no perks to being an Academy voter, only that it is, strictly speaking, not a job. Now, that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, here's the other thing. Because it is not a job, this is not something that people spend their whole life committed to. In fact, most of the Academy members are working actors and editors and cinematographers and directors. These are people who are working throughout the year. In fact, they might even be busy during Oscar season itself, where they're working 12 to 16 hours a day on a movie that they're hoping will get picked up by someone other than Netflix because they want it in theaters. These people might not necessarily have the time to watch everything that gets nominated. And if you're one of these people, I mean, it's kind of like, look, for you and me, we do this for fun. But since we're not getting paid to pay attention to the Oscars, if we said, don't really want to see Emilia Perez, just heard too many bad things about it, not interested, and no one would raise an eyebrow. But because the person is an actual voter, they might have the same 9 to 5 as you do. Heck, they might have more than a 9 to 5. They might not have had a day off in weeks. And we're expecting them like, you must watch every single movie that gets nominated, or you should give up your position in the Academy. I think that would be unrealistic. and maybe even
Hey,
a
you
little
made it to the end.
cruel to boot. Because again, they are not doing this as a job. In fact, they are paying money to be there. I mean, look, here's the thing. There are members out there who have memberships of Club 33, Disney's exclusive restaurant. Many of us Disney fans would kill to have that membership. And there are some Club 33 members who I have talked to who admit they really don't go to the club that often. They might go a couple times a year, but for the most part, it's a business expense. It's where they go to wine and dine potential clients. They don't really find a lot of personal value in going to that club. And a Disney fan would say, well, there's so few memberships. Why don't you give that up so that someone else can have it? But the bottom line is, they don't need to give it up. Look, they got to be a member of the club. They've paid their dues. And whether they want to go twice a year or 300 times a year, honestly, it's none of our business. It's none of our business, and we should not dictate if those people should have Club 33 memberships. Only Disney can decide that. Well, it's the same thing with the Academy Awards. Like, you get chosen, you get invited, you accept it, you pay your dues, and then you can watch as many movies or as few as you want before casting your ballots. Now, there are some categories, primarily the shorts categories and maybe the documentary category, where they do have like a card of some sort where the person has to watch the shorts, then they get the card scanned. So it's like, okay, this person watched the shorts, therefore let them vote for that category. There are some categories that are so niche that the Academy does require a little bit more proof. Best Picture is not one of them, although maybe it should be. I'm not saying I'm against the idea of making it so that if you're going to vote for the biggest honor of the night, you should have seen the movie. Although, fun fact, I don't know if Parasite would have won under those circumstances. Maybe I'll tell why in another episode. Let me know if you'd like to hear that. But there are some limitations on that. And I would think that the voters would at least like to see the Best Picture nominees, but they don't always have the time. They don't always have to. I know animated feature is a very contentious one because so many voters admit they don't even watch the animated movies. They're like, I stopped watching animated movies when I was 6. And it's like, yeah, that's a little insulting. But what's the alternative? If they say, okay, you have to vote for this, then they'll go to their kid or their grandkid and they'll say, which one of these did you like the most? And the kid will pick. So I'll give credit to the voters who, okay, they say they're not watching the animated films, but they're also not voting for them. They're like, yeah, I'm just abstaining on that one, which you can do. If there's a category you don't feel comfortable giving a vote in, you can abstain. And I think that a lot of Academy voters are pretty good about that. If they have not seen enough of the competition in certain categories, they will just simply not vote. And I personally have no issue with that whatsoever. Because it's like, yeah, it'd be nice if you could vote, but at the same time, if you don't know, you don't know. And you don't want to just check a box that you've heard it's particularly good, and then what if one day you actually see it, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's the movie? That's the costume design? That's the editing? Did I really vote for that? So I think that's fine too. But and look, again, this is frustrating. I know you would hope that the Academy Award voters, the average one anyway, would want to see as much as possible, would abstain from everything that they don't know. Heck, I'm sure some people would be glad, like, oh, I don't really watch a whole lot, so some members don't vote. It's weird, but they don't vote. For them, the Academy membership is for many of the events that the Academy puts on. They don't necessarily care that much about voting for the Oscars. And I'm sure that there's some rule that if a certain voter doesn't vote enough times, then they probably get like a little love tap saying, hey, you better start voting or else your membership might get revoked. I'm not saying that happens. I don't know for sure, but it makes sense. So here's the thing, folks. Don't take it too personally. At the end of the day, it's just awards. Being an Academy voter is not a job. It isn't. And here's the thing. If you were in their position where it's like You were being asked to put a lot of time and effort into something that technically was not paying anything. Maybe you would have some reservations about watching movies you don't want to. Like, if you see 6 out of the 10 Best Picture nominees, I think that's enough for, like, you to be able to pick one of them. Like, I just think that's okay. If the anonymous ballot voter says, I'm abstaining from this category because I didn't see enough, I think that's perfectly fine. But even though we enjoy what we do when it comes to the Oscars predicting and everything like that, you do have to keep in mind that these are working people. And if we were in that position, maybe we wouldn't want to watch all these movies. I do think that the Academy should have a verification for watching at least the Best Picture nominees. But until they do that, this is how it is, and, well, it is what it is. What can I say? So anyway, that is my thoughts on that. But hey, here's a thought. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you believe that if you do not watch all of the movies, or even 75% of the movies that are nominated, do you think that person should have to give up their membership card? I would love to know, so comment below. And if you are listening to this podcast for the first time and you like what you hear, let's make it official. Subscribe. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Deezer, all the major podcasting platforms. And as always, I'll see you at the movies. Take care. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Just a few more things. First of all, the names that you see on the screen, these are our Patreon and YouTube member supporters. And I thank each and every one of them. Their support helps me make exclusive videos for Patreon and YouTube members, as well as keep the channel running. And of course, is just of huge kindness to me. Also, don't forget to check out the iCritic-led podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Deezer, whatever podcasting service you listen to. It is there. We definitely want to see you there. And hey, there's also other videos that you can check out. So, check out these other channels, these other videos, especially that one. I think that's a really good one.